Hey there, YouTube. I know I've not made a video in a while. It's been about 10 days, I think, since my last video went up. But it's been awkward for me. I've had migraines. I've had bad issues with health. I've not been in a great place. And the last thing I want to do is make content that's just there for the sake of it. But I want to make this video, and I'm actually testing something out. The camera is actually attached to my knee, as you can see, because it's moving around. I thought I could get it closer in, and I could have a more face-to-face conversation, because if I've got it all the way back on the table, it's difficult for me to reach out. I can't change the angle, I can't interact quite so much. This way I can look directly at the camera, and I can talk to you. You're only like a foot away. It feels like I don't have to shout at you. So I'm hoping that this comes out well. It might be really, really shaky and horrible, in which case I'll stop doing it. But anyway, yeah, I've not had the best of time the last 2 weeks. My health seems to constantly do this. I'll feel like I'm just about reaching a good point, and then I'll suddenly have another trough. I'll feel like I'm just coming out of it, and then another thing will hit me. So it's been a roller coaster. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. What I actually want to talk about is the nature of criticism and review. Because I think that as a member of the media, people should have the right to review and talk about whatever they want, give their opinions, but also they have a responsibility to give their opinions properly, to not be influenced by other people. And I think this is something that is often misunderstood. It was the basis behind the Gamergate movement, which has been mischaracterized as some kind of weird sexist hatred of women movement. It wasn't. It was all about journalism. It was about transparency in games journalism. And it just so happened that the person who was sleeping with half the critics that were reviewing her game and throwing a hissy fit whenever anyone spoke out against the game, was a screaming blue-haired feminist. Of course she was. But let's not get into that. No, the whole point was that we wanted fair and transparent reviews, where we knew whether or not the critic had a prior relationship with the game developer or the writer or whatever. And I think the same needs to be true in something like Booktube. The problem is, Booktube has developed an issue now where the line between booktuber and author is really falling apart now. Like the Sun Eater series, for example. The Sun Eater series is very popular on Booktube, but at the same point, Christopher Ruocchio, who writes the Sun Eater series, is friends with loads of booktubers, and he's an active contributor to Mike's Book Reviews Discord server. He talks to many different people. He's had interviews with them. Now, does that mean that their reviews are invalidated? No, of course not. It doesn't mean that they're not allowed to review his work. It doesn't mean they're not allowed to have a critical eye on his work. But what it does mean is, are they going to go easier on it? Are they going to look at his books and go, I'm friends with this man. Do I want to tear it in your arsehole? Do I want to say that this felt flat and this character felt unrealistic and these prose were really badly written? Because when you're saying that about a guy you've never met, it's just criticism of a work. But when you're saying that about a person that you speak to on a regular basis, you then have to confront them afterwards. And you have to be able to metaphorically, or in some cases even literally, look them in the eye and say, I said that about the thing that you put years of your life into writing, the thing that you put your heart and soul into. Yeah, I said these horrible things about it that, whether true or not, are hurtful and honestly probably make you feel like a failure, especially when they come from a friend. That makes it hard. But conversely, what if the opposite happens? What if, because you're friends, you worry that that's going to colour your review? It's going to make your review tarnished in some way. It's going to make it seem corrupted. So you go the other way. You become overcritical. that's got to happen a few times where someone goes, well, I know this person, they're my friend, I'm related to them or something like that, so I have to prove that I'm a fair and balanced critic. I have to be hypercritical. I have to point out the flaws, which means that now you're not being reasonable. You're being needlessly harsh just to prove that you're not showing favoritism. And I'm not sure that that helps anyone either. So how do we combat this? How do we go from being someone who doesn't know an author to someone who does, and reviewing a book? And I'm using books specifically because on BookTube, those are the things that we're more likely to be exposed to. We're more likely to speak to an author for a book that we like. We're less likely to go and talk to the lead designer at Ubisoft. Right? We're not going to go and talk to the director of From Software. We're not going to be talking to Quentin Tarantino next time he releases a feature film. These things aren't going to happen. But we might get a chance to talk to Joe Abercrombie or Brandon Sanderson. And I know we can because multiple booktubers have done exactly that. They've interviewed these people directly on their channel. And despite the fact that I have less than 1,200 subscribers at the time of recording this, I have had an author reach out to me and say, would I like to receive their book? Would I like to show this book to people? Give it a check? Give it a read? Say what I think of it? And I said, sure, why not? Now, Chris is a member of my Gilded server, and I've had a couple of conversations with him. He seems like a nice guy. So how do I go about reviewing this book now? What do I do with this? Because I could read it, and I could just tell you what I think. But subconsciously I'm going to be going, this is the first author who's shown any interest in my channel, shown any interest in my community, who has asked for my opinion, and values my opinion enough that he wants it firsthand. So, am I going to be more harsh, less harsh? Am I just going to be more thorough? Am I going to spend more time and be more critical and give more of a chance to this book than I would another book? Because the person who wrote this values my input. I'm going to be honest, I think I probably will. I would not have read this book otherwise. I would have picked this up and I'd have gone, okay, the artwork on the front is fine, but it doesn't stand out to me. It doesn't seem to be anything special. It's just a woman with a rabbit behind it. It might be a spirit rabbit. There's candles. It's fairly generic. It's not bad art, but it's nothing outside of the ordinary. It does not look like anything different. This looks like a book. Doesn't even scream fantasy, if we're honest. Admittedly, it does avoid the cliches, which is a good thing. But from there, what can I do? I mean, I could read the blurb. I will say, the print of this, because it's self-published, is a little washed out. Like the colours could do with having more contrast and more bold lines around the text, especially on the blurb. The blurb very much blends in because of the way that the cover is printed. But that's fine. I mean, it's technically not actually self-published. I should confirm. Actually, it's not actually self-published. It is like a small independent publishing house called Fenris Publishing, which is a small special interest publishing house. They publish graphic novels mainly, from what I understand. But they're moving into publishing novels, and they focus on a particular style of fantasy. So, what we have here is a book that is of a style that I am very familiar with. And it's just by chance that Christopher contacted me about this, because he didn't know that I was familiar with the community. This is a book that is very much about animal spirits and animal connections. It's very much focused on the anthropomorphic animal angle, and the reason for that is that Fenris Publishing has a lot of contacts and a lot of pull within the fur fandom, or at least it did. Now, for those who don't know, because furry has one hell of terrible um, a terrible reputation on the internet. The fur fandom is just a fandom of people who enjoy anthropomorphic artwork of some description. That could be a comic, it could be a TV show, it could be, it could be pretty much anything, really. It's no different than, say, the anime fandom. Right? Anime, manga, same thing. Only instead of it being Japanese stylized people with specific publishing trends and art trends, things like that. It's instead more Western cartoons, more Western animation, and it tends to follow an anthropomorphic animal, spirit animal, werewolves, those kinds of things are commonplace. It's not really anywhere close to as established. Though I would say there are a few things that, if you're even vaguely aware of media, you've probably encountered. Anything like Bugs Bunny or the Warner Brothers style cartoons. Those would be the kinds of things that the fur fandom would enjoy. A lot of Disney stuff is enjoyed by the fur fandom. Things like The Animals of Farthing Wood was a show I remember watching as a kid. Fantastic show, by the way. I would strongly suggest going back to that. It's one of those shows that as a kid I remember watching, and it really imparts this idea of balance and nature and the more harsh realities of nature and the difficulties of animals living in the wild. It's designed for kids, but it's got stark realities of life built into it, which is a really nice touch. I highly recommend it. So yeah, Animals of Farthing Wood's a good example. Obviously, the My Little Pony craze, that would be very much furry because it's anthropomorphic animals. So yeah, very furry, but it's its own fandom within the fur fandom. Like Brony would be a subset of the furry fandom, whether they want to admit it or not. But also there's other things. There's like people who are fans of like dragons and mythical creatures like griffins and things like that. Hippogriffs, unicorns, anything like that. If you want to write fantasy that's heavily focused on like fey creatures, that fits very well within the fur fandom. A lot of people enjoy that from an aesthetic point of view. So that's what this is. Now, obviously, the fur fandom, like every other fandom, has its porn aspect, which, let's face it, you already knew that. Anime has its porn aspect. It's called hentai. Live action TV has its porn aspect. It's called porn. So, we can pretend like it's some kind of weird fetish group if we like, but that's lying to yourselves. Let's not do that. There is obviously that part to it. There's that part to everything. It's a rule of the internet. Everyone knows that. If you can think about it, there's porn. But yeah, I'm going to give this a read and a chance, and I'm going to see what I think of it. But I think that it's interesting to ask the question, how does my relationship with an author change the review? And I'm going to be critical of myself in a very kind of meta-critical analysis kind of way. I want to see what I come up with for a review of this. And because I'm changing the way I'm doing my reviews anyway, I'm going to compare it to books after it that I review and see if I was approaching this book differently. I'll be interested to see whether or not you guys think that I was fair, balanced, and reasonable, whether or not I approached this book differently, whether there was a subconscious bias. I want to see what you guys think. So let me know. Let me know whether or not you can see a bias, conscious or subconscious, because I want to know if I'm able to befriend an author and review their book without it affecting the criticism I give it. I think that's a fascinating topic. I think the more open we are to the possibility that we can be subconsciously biased or subconsciously show favoritism, the better we will be at discussing and analysing art. So, thanks for listening. and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.